Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari. Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Panachari Yamuna Tira Panachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari. Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Panachari Jamuna Tira Panachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. It is with great pleasure that we welcome His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj today in the Dharma Castle. Maharaj has been coming from Amsterdam, where he is part of developing a very nice new temple project, and before that in London. And I think we all have seen a little bit about Radhanath Maharaj on the internet, where he is very much present. I remember the last picture I saw of him was embracing Obama, the President of the United States. And at that time I felt may this embrace go into the heart of Obama so that he can make good decisions. I was thinking that Maharaj is at the really traveling all over the world and meeting many interesting people and being part of a lot of new developments in spreading the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, spreading Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. He's really going all over the world, and just when we came down, one devotee's friend was there and meeting Radhanath Maharaj for the first time. And she said something about him which I think is very relevant. He said, "My God, such a warm heart." This is maybe one of the many descriptions which describe a little bit Maharaj. For me, it's more than a warm heart, it's a warm heart which can touches other hearts. So we are very, very happy that he is today with us here in the Dharma Castle, and we are very happy that all of you could find the time to come here. We are also want to greet our internet audience, which is there in the computer and looking very much. We want to say that by the magic of internet, you are certainly with us. Stay with us. Invite your friends to also join us. Radhanath Maharaj has requested me to say something in introduction of his lecture, and I will of course follow the order of my older brother, but I really pray that I don't speak too long and not at all foolish. So I will talk about a subject which is very, very dear and very important to me. It is the transformation of the heart by a very important subject, or important, let me say, method, the method of absorption. So, if you know the prayers, please join us. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatyane Sadarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Once there was a very tragic incident in the Himalayas which taught me a lot. It was about, what happened was that there was a dhobi, a washerman, who washed the clothes of the people in the villages down at the Ganga, who became a yogi. The dhobi had a donkey who carried the wet cloth from the banks of the Ganga up to the place where the washermen dried these cloths. And in this way, by working together for many years, a firm friendship between the washermen and the donkey developed. They were dependent on each other. So it so happened that this donkey died by some stones falling down from the mountains, an avalanche or something. And the washerman fell into a state of deep depression. He sat down, and for half a year he sat without saying anything. He had his eyes closed. He denied any food. No one could see him speak. He wouldn't sleep. And for half a year he sat there in perfect silence. Like it is very common in India, people saw this washerman and they were impressed because he didn't take food, nor drink, nor did he sleep. And they thought this is probably a self-realized soul. A few people came and sat around the washerman and felt some sense of peace coming over them. And after some time, these people began to canvass for him. We have a self-realized master. He sits at the bank of the Ganga. He's not eating, he's not sleeping. Everyone, please come and see him. So then somehow one of these disciples asked the yogi, who was previously a washerman, when will you ever speak again, Holy Master? And the washerman said, yes, in half a year. So a day was fixed, and really all the villages in the Himalayas came to hear the first words of the yogi when he came out of Samadhi. Now there was an ocean of people, maybe 20,000, waiting for the words of the self-realized master. And then he opened his eyes, he looked around, and he said with great empathy, with great force, "My donkey, I miss him so much." For 1 year, this man who was proclaimed to be a yogi had meditated about his lost donkey. He was absorbed. Externally he looked like a perfectly self-realized soul, but because his mind was still absorbed in material things, he remained an ordinary washerman. Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra says the whole purpose of any type of yoga is that yoga vritti chitta nirodha, that the waves, thought waves of the mind come to a standstill. That means that we stop being absorbed in material things. And in Krishna consciousness we learn that the whole goal of our Krishna consciousness practice is to purify the mind in such a way that he is absorbed in matters of transcendence, that one never forgets Krishna and always remembers him. This is called absorption. I feel if we want to take the process of Krishna consciousness serious and make progress on the path, we need to ask ourselves deeply, how can I make progress in the art of absorption. Jiva Goswami describes in Bhakti Sandarbha that the mind should become so engaged and absorbed in Krishna that it really turns Krishna conscious, no longer material conscious, but Krishna conscious. And he gives the example of a piece of cloth which is put into a container with blue water. It's called dye, Färbemittel. And then when the cloth is taken out of the container with water, it has stopped to have its original color, but it has adopted the color in which it was poured. It has absorbed the color. So in our Krishna conscious practice, we need to come to the stage where we absorb Krishna, where Krishna becomes colored into our mind, and our mind becomes a temple. I'm now preparing many seminars, both for people who come new to spiritual life and also for practicing devotees. It's a seminar about sacred space. It is coming from the Upanishadic tradition. It says that each one of us has a place in the heart, a very private place which is very small, but in which the whole universe can fit in. It's a place in which there's the Atman and Paramatma present, the soul and the super soul. And to be absorbed really means to come and find this place which is there in the heart and stay in this place and not leave it. Because if you stay in that sacred space, then you will be together with Krishna. And if you are together with Krishna, you will become influenced and transformed by him and become absorbed. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur takes this Upanishadic concept of the Hriday Akash, the sky within the heart, and calls it the Hriday Mandire, the temple of the heart. And he says this temple of the heart is blocked, closed, locked by a layer of avidya and ignorance. But he says there is a road which leads into this temple of the heart, a road which pierces through the layer of ignorance. And he calls this road the processes of bhakti. When you go the processes of bhakti and you take the processes of bhakti, you will actually be able to access this table, this sacred space, or the temple of the heart. But I would like to say something which is very important, maybe slightly philosophically provocative, and an introduction to what Radhanath Maharaj will tell us. My dear devotees, my dear friends of Lord Krishna, and my dear skeptics, we all know about the processes of the heart, of bhakti. We've heard chanting is one of these processes, hearing the Bhagavatam, residing in the sacred Dham, worshipping the deity, etc. But do we feel that we have arrived in the temple of the heart in our life? I have asked this question in many public assemblies where Vaishnavas have come together. I have asked this question in yoga circles. I asked them, have you actually found that Hriday Akash? Or have you found this temple of the heart? And have you found yourself and Krishna within it? And my audience has always smiled at me, acknowledging that this is a good question. But they also indicated there's still some way to go until I have reached. I want to say today, the processes of bhakti can only work if you practice them with a sense of sambandha. Sambandha, translated in very simple English terms, is a sense of connectedness, a bond, an inner bond. So when you chant Hare Krishna, you need to fix your mind on Krishna. Then, when this connection, mind to the goal of the practice is there, your practice will bring you there. But when you chant Hare Krishna and your mind is with your donkey means material subjects, remember the washerman, the chanting will bring you there. It will enhance your meditation. It won't take you out of the donkey consciousness. I'm sorry, it sounds so provocative, I know. And will bring you to a Krishna consciousness. So this sambandha, this inner orientation, which leads to a sense of connectedness, is very important. When we speak of chanting, it means, Ishan, that you chant and you are aware of the person whose name you chant. I noticed your mind was going somewhere else. It followed your eyes. Most probably you thought of someone in the crowd, and you were not able to listen to the lecture because the lecture was going on, but the mind is somewhere else. It's not in sambandha. It is not connected to Krishna. So practice with sambandha, and this will lead you to the absorption of the mind. That's all what I wanted to say. I wanted to now give the microphone to Radhanath Maharaj, but I really, Maharaj, want to thank you so much for coming. When you first announced on the telephone that you will come to Berlin, I thought, impossible. I mean, you are a good-hearted person, and you are the best friend in the universe, but how will you make it with your busy time schedule and most important people like Obama to meet? Why should you come to Berlin? I was thinking like this. But then again, you proved really the depth of your friendship and your vision of not seeing who's qualified and who's unqualified. And you came, and I can only believe it if I touch your knee. So, thank you. Now kindly enlighten us.
Om Agyantimidandasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurun Bilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patithanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I am most grateful to be with all of you this evening. I am here because His Holiness Sacinandana Swami Maharaj bound me by the feet and the hands, and most of all by my heart, with the ropes of his affection, and he dragged me here. And his affection is irresistible because he's so absorbed. And because he's so absorbed, I become absorbed by him. This is something we could learn from great, great personalities like His Holiness Sacinandana Maharaj. There are many ways and many levels of being absorbed. And bhakti means to be absorbed in everything we do. The goal of life is to be totally absorbed constantly in the desire to please the Lord. Just a few minutes ago, I first met Madhavi Saki's beloved mother. We welcome you. Your name again? Anita. We welcome you, Anita, to the Dharma Castle. I'm welcoming you even though it's the first time I've been here also. But she told me that she read the book that I wrote, The Journey Home, and with great emotion she was thinking about how my mother must have felt when I left home at 19. I told my parents I will be gone for 2 months. And then I will definitely return, I promise, to continue college. And they did not want me to go. But my father said, if I could stop you, I would, but I cannot. The only thing that gave them any solace was that I would be home within 2.5 months. And 2.5 months passed. And they didn't hear anything. 3 months passed. 3.5 months passed. 4 months passed. They didn't know if I was dead or alive. They were absorbed. And then finally, they got a letter saying, I decided I'm going to go to India. My friend Gary's no longer with me. I'm hitchhiking. I have no money. But I am going to India to see how people of the East see life and see God. And my dear parents, what better education could there be there than this? And then I said something that I knew they could not follow. I said, please do not worry. And I was 19, teenage boy. Had never been out of America my whole life. And that was the end of the letter. It was postmarked Iran. They worried. They were absorbed. I learned later that they were so absorbed they could hardly eat or sleep for days and days. Then they were getting letters from the Himalayan mountains. I thought they were going to feel that I was so cool. I told them how I'm living in the jungles of the Himalayas, in caves, learning lessons from the leopards and the poison snakes. And they were in total distress. Just earlier this year, it was actually last year, I called my father up in the morning one day, and he's always very positive. I said, "How are you?" He replied, "Terrible." Very, very rarely have I ever heard him say that. I said, "What happened?" He said, "I didn't sleep all night." I said, "Why?" He said, "I read your book before going to sleep." Was it that bad? It was worse. I said, "Which part did you read?" He said, "I read the part where you were drowning in quicksand. And you were all alone in an isolated place where there was no other people for miles around, and it was the middle of the day in the hot Indian sun, and you were being sucked down by quicksand. And you were squirming, and you were sinking deeper and deeper. And then you grabbed onto a thorn bush, and you were pulling and pulling and pulling, and your hands were getting all lacerated and bloody, and then the thorn bush came right out with its roots from the ground, and you threw it aside. And somehow or other you struggled and went into this river, and then you started drowning in the river." He said to me, "The whole night I was tossing and turning in total anxiety, thinking, if you didn't get out of that quicksand, your mother and myself would have never ever heard what happened to you for the rest of our lives. There would have been no closure. We would have lived every day worrying, not knowing if you're dead or alive, waiting for you to return." That thought was driving me crazy all night. I said, "Father, that happened 40 years ago. I'm safe now. I'm not in quicksand." His reply was very meaningful. I learned a lot from his reply, but it's a secret. But good secrets we could tell. When I said, "That was 40 years ago, I'm fine now," he said, "You do not understand the heart of a father." And I was speechless. Because of love, because of care, he was absorbed. Spontaneously, simultaneously absorbed. When we care, when we don't do what we do for material profit, for fame, for distinction, when we don't do things for selfish reasons, when we don't do things just in a ritualistic way because we're just supposed to do it, but when we really care, we're absorbed. Just like when His Holiness Sacinandana Swami Maharaj, when he's speaking to people, did you ever see how absorbed he is? The reason he's so absorbed is because he really cares about the people he's speaking to. He really wants to help them. He really wants to please his guru, Srila Prabhupada. He really wants to please Krishna. Therefore, whatever he does, he's absorbed. The deepest, greatest absorption in the whole creation is absorption in love. It's much greater than absorption in fear or greed or lust. The nature of the soul is it wants to be absorbed in something. And Maharaj was talking about the nature of the mind. The mind is looking for something to absorb itself in constantly because it needs absorption. Nobody wants, because there's no fulfillment in any experience that is superficial without depth. And we read in the scriptures about different kinds of people who are absorbed in different things. Hiranyakashipu, he was totally absorbed. Not in a donkey, but in conquering the universe. He was absorbed in power. He was absorbed in the experience that I have such power that people will die at my command. People will live at my command. Ravana, he was totally absorbed in sex desire. Then there's other people today. I was just speaking to somebody who lives on Wall Street. He was a very, very big, important person on Wall Street in America. And he's writing a book called Conversations with Wall Street. And he's asking some of the biggest people before and after the fall of the big crisis of Wall Street about what they were thinking. And they were talking about the people of America and everybody else. And he's saying, they are our food and our only motive is to eat them. In this business, there is absolutely no room for ethics or morality. You just get what you can at any cost. These people, some of them, are the most influential people on the planet. They're absorbed. They're absorbed in greed. Now we all have these tendencies of absorption. And because of habits, our absorption is very much according to these tendencies that we have developed in our lives. But Krishna gives a solution. Vishayavani vartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param dristvani vartate. That we can only give up these lower tendencies that we get absorbed in by experiencing a higher taste. And what is that higher taste? Unselfish love that is free of ego. Absorption in wanting to serve and to please God. Absorption in wanting to show true compassion to other living beings. That is the higher taste. And for that, we need each other in order to actually connect to that type of absorption. To focus our mind in absorbing in those activities that free us and enlighten us. Just recently I was in California and I visited one very well-known man and his wife, and they live in the Hollywood area, and he asked me first, would you like to come to the Alcoholics Anonymous meeting with me? You have AA here in Germany, I think everywhere in the world, and I'm sure you must be a lot of people in Germany, because you export beer all over the world, so... So I went to this meeting, and there were some really, really well-known people, and they were talking so much about their suffering when they were drinking alcohol. It's very interesting how they work. How many of you have been, well, you don't have to answer this question. Because usually you have to be an alcoholic to go to those meetings. But somehow, because an ex-alcoholic invited me to be a special honorary guest, I got to go in. But I've gone to many, actually. But when the person stands up, they say their name, and they say, I am an alcoholic. Even if they've been an alcoholic, even if they've not even smelled the scent of alcohol for 30 years, they'll still say, I am an alcoholic. Because they understand they have that tendency. And if they're not really alert, and if they're not really on guard, they know that they're going to fall again. And therefore they always go to their meetings. I know people who have not had alcohol for 25 years, but still every week they'll go to the meeting, because they believe if I don't, I might fall. And the concept is, without the grace of a higher power, we cannot overcome our weaknesses. We have no power ourselves. And in order to connect to that higher power, we need a community of people that are helping us, that are reminding us. And that's very much what sadhu sangam is. How we need each other to focus on something higher. Srila Prabhupada explained, the idle mind is the devil's workshop. The greatest protection against our lower tendencies is to be absorbed in serving God, in serving Krishna. To be absorbed. And that absorption, we need each other to help to focus, to remind ourselves. And it means to care. Whatever we're doing, the higher taste is to do it for pleasing Krishna. A person can be totally absorbed in samadhi while washing a floor. A mother can be totally absorbed in the highest perfection of yoga while cleaning a pot or cutting a vegetable or changing the diapers of a baby. Just as much as a sannyasi can be absorbed in giving a lecture to 10,000 people. Whatever we're doing, it's important to be absorbed, because Krishna doesn't accept what we offer. Krishna accepts the intention in which it is offered. Krishna is Saragrahi. He accepts the essence. He is Bhavagrahi. He accepts our love. So yes, we read and we hear about great pujaris who are worshiping the Lord on the altar, and they are so absorbed in every little detail. Lord Chaitanya talks about Raghava Pandit in Panihati. Raghava Pandit was so absorbed, he kind of seemed like a fanatic, but he wasn't a fanatic, he just really cared. He had a big coconut grove in his backyard, and he had thousands of coconuts. But if he would hear of a better coconut, even if it was 100 miles away, he would go all the way there just to get that coconut. Because he wanted Krishna to get the best possible coconut. And after going all that way, he would cut it in a special way, and then he gave it one day to his priest to bring on the altar, the pujari, and as the person was bringing it on the altar, he touched his hand above the door. And Raghava Pandit said, "You touched above the door. People walk on the ground, and wind may come, and the wind may take what comes off your feet and put it up there, and you touch that, and then you touch the plate that the coconut was on. This coconut cannot be offered to Krishna." And he took the coconut and threw it over the wall. He went so many miles to get that coconut. Then he went and got another one and offered it himself. Now, Srila Prabhupada said some people may think he had some cleansophobia or something. Some people are very afraid of germs, but it wasn't about germs. He just cared so much that everything offered to Krishna must be with such devotion, and devotion means really doing it nicely. When we really care and try to do whatever we're doing very, very nicely, we become absorbed. If we're just cleaning the floor like this, just as a ritual, that's not absorption. But if we're cleaning the floor really, really meticulously examining that every part of the floor I'm making so nice, that's absorption. And when we're doing it for Krishna, that's absorption in love. When we're worshiping the deity, when we're talking to each other, we should be absorbed in caring for each other, in enlightening each other, in enlivening each other, and that is actually how we make real spiritual progress. This is a universal principle. In the Bible, Jesus said, "Be hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, I spit you out." That means you have to be absorbed. There should be an intensity, not in a fanatical way, but in a loving way. That is bhakti. Haridas Thakur, how he was absorbed in the chanting of the holy names. He's the Acharya. We cannot imitate him, but we can very much learn from him and try to follow the principles that he lived by. Thakur Haridas, when he would chant this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it wasn't that he was just trying to get his 300,000 names done every day. He chanted 192 rounds every day. Now some of us chant 16 rounds. I'm not going to ask. But some of us chant 16 rounds every day. And is it that sometimes we just want to get it done so that we could do something else? Well, that's good. At least you're going to get it done. But ye yatamam prapadyante tamstataiva pajamyaham. Krishna tells in Gita, as you absorb yourself in me, that's how I'm going to reciprocate. You're not going to taste much of the name just by trying to get it done, because Krishna responds according to how we approach. If we're chanting to get done, then the main thing we get out of it is we get done. Krishna says, yes, you want to get done? Okay. At a certain point, by my mercy, you'll get done. That's what we want. But if we really want love of God, and we're really trying to absorb ourselves, then Krishna will definitely give us love of God. Krishna is not different than his name. So Haridas Thakur was chanting 192 rounds every day. How many hours that took, it's very difficult to understand. But he wasn't trying to get done. He was totally absorbed in every syllable of every name, pulling his full concentration and tasting the sweetness of the name. And even when the most beautiful prostitute, even Maya Devi herself, tried to distract his mind, he just kept chanting. And he wasn't fanatical about it. He was very loving and caring. He said, "Oh, miss, my respects to you. You want to enjoy? It's all right, just sit and I will satisfy your desire. Let me just finish my rounds." And he was so absorbed, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And ultimately one night passed, and she said, "What about me?" He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, miss. I didn't finish my chanting. Come tomorrow, I'll finish. I think I'll finish tomorrow." So she came the next day, and he was Hare Krishna. He was so absorbed. He had no desire, he had no inclination, because he was tasting something so much higher. He was absorbed in Krishna. Nam Nam Akari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktish. That the name of God is none different than God. The beauty, the sweetness, the love, the kindness of God is all within the name. And we can access according to how we're absorbed. So the second night, she sat there and she was doing everything she could to get his attention. And he was nice to her. He was the kindest person she ever met. Please sit down. Here Tulsi is there. You can sit, and I'll be with you. Just a moment. Hare Krishna. And the second night, the sun rose. She said, "What about me?" He said, I didn't finish my chanting tonight. What he didn't tell her is he never finishes his chanting. Because even after 192 rounds, he just keeps Kirtaniya Sada Hari. And the third night, she started chanting along with him. Because, there's nothing else to do. He was so absorbed that by his association, he absorbed her. And she absorbed him. And their hearts became like one, in the sense that his love for Krishna affected her so much that by the end of the night, she was absorbed in chanting Krishna's names. And then Haridas Thakur says, "Okay, I finished my rounds. Now, what would you like me to do?" And she said, "Give me initiation. I want to surrender to you." And she was so absorbed. She gave away everything, and she just sat in front of Tulsi. Haridas said, "I'm going away. You stay here." And she said, "Actually, somebody hired me just to destroy your life." And Haridas said, "I know that. And I would have left the first night. I knew that. I only stayed an extra 3 days just to help you." He cared. And she became one of the greatest saints in a place called Benapole. If you've ever been there, there's a deity of her that people go to worship because she was such a saint. And then later on, Haridas Thakur, he was arrested because so many people hated him. The common people loved him more than they loved their own life because he loved them. It's interesting. The best way to be loved is to love. When you love people, people love you back. Not everybody, but some people. Sometimes people come to me and says, "Nobody cares about me." And one of the greatest things is, do I care about them? If I care about them, I will bring out the same experience from good people. So people loved Haridas Thakur. But other people hated him because he was like a competitor. And the people that hated him were people who were in high posts of religion, who are supposed to be the most unconditional lovers of everyone. What to speak of loving a saint? And they made a warrant for his arrest. And he heard about it and just came, gave himself up. And they told him, if you don't stop this chanting of God's names in public, then we're going to torture you and kill you. And Haridas said, there's only one God. You have your name of God, I have my name of God, but it's the same God. But Krishna, that beautiful form of God of Krishna, has charmed and enchanted my heart, and I can't stop chanting his name. You can cut my body into 1,000,000 pieces, and every piece is going to be chanting Krishna's names. Now do what you like with me. And the king, he said, torture and kill this animal. Called him an animal. And he was sentenced to be beaten through 22 marketplaces in public until he was dead. And they beat him all day through 22 marketplaces. And at the end of the day, the executioners couldn't even move their arms. They were so tired. And they said, Haridas, how is it that you're still alive? Nobody has ever lived past 2 marketplaces, and you've lived past 22 marketplaces. And we've beaten you and stabbed you and kicked you and everything we could do to you. And you're looking at us as if you feel sorry for us. You're not looking at us in pain or suffering or pleading for mercy or anger. You're looking at us with love, like you feel sorry for us. Well, now you should feel sorry for us, because if we can't kill you, we are going to die. So he said, oh, my being alive is a problem for you? Just watch what I do. And he, all of a sudden, by his own will, there was no heartbeat, there was no breath, there was no pulse, he was dead. So the executioners, they picked his body up, and they threw him in front of the king and the Qazi. They say, he's dead, we did our work. Then there was a debate, should we bury him? And the people of one religion said, no, if you bury him, he'll get a good destination. Should we cremate him? And people from another religion said, no, if you cremate him, he'll get a good destination. Just throw him in the river like a piece of garbage. They threw him in the river and went underwater. A couple miles later, he came back to life, crawled out of the water. He rose from the dead, came out of the water. Now, if it was you or me, we would have probably run the other way, right? He walked right back to the king and the Qazi. Because he cared about them. He went right back to the executioners. And when they saw him, they realized he's really absorbed. This man loves God. He's come back to save us from the karma and the sins of killing him. And they actually bowed down to him and said, go do whatever you like, no problem. We will not disturb you anymore. But the scripture tells us, while he was being beaten, years later, Lord Chaitanya, he called Haridas Thakur before him during the Mahaprakash, where he was fulfilling everyone's innermost desires. And he said, Haridas, when you were being beaten, you were so absorbed in chanting my names. And along with chanting my names, because you were so absorbed in chanting my names, you didn't even feel them beating you. I had to cover you with my own body. I wanted to kill them, but the whole time you were praying to me, please forgive them. The power of your forgiveness, I had no power to kill them. And this is God speaking. So I had to cover you and protect you. And then the Lord uncovered himself and showed all the beating marks on himself. And Haridas fell unconscious. You did this for me, my Lord? He was absorbed in the sweetness of the holy name. And by doing that, he was tasting such deep love, such deep compassion, that he saw a part of God, a brother and a sister in every living being, and he loved everyone. This is a Christian principle too. It's a universal principle. It's a Jewish principle. It's a principle in every great spiritual path that we should love our enemies too. That's not easy. It can't be done artificially. To love the essence, to love that part of God, the soul within every heart, can only take place when we are really deeply absorbed in love for Krishna. When there is love for Krishna, it manifests as love for every living being. So Krishna consciousness is about actually being conscious of Krishna. Being absorbed in that consciousness of Krishna. Lord Chaitanya prayed, Yugayatam nimeshena chakshusha pravrashayatam sunyayatam jagat sarvam govinda virahena me. Such absorption. This is his prayer. I want to be like this. My Lord, in separation from you, a moment seems like 12 years or more. And the entire world, the whole entire universe, with all of its variegatedness, is like a dreary void without seeing you, Govinda. That's absorption. The 6 Goswamis and Lord Chaitanya taught us how to experience this absorption in the mood of separation from Krishna. Viraha bhava. So in whatever we do, we should really consciously be trying to practice this absorption. Because we really care. Because we seriously take responsibility for our particular duties, and also we take responsibility for the goal of life. Of doing whatever we do the best we possibly can to please Krishna. Doesn't matter who we are. There's that well-known story that Hanuman was building the bridge across the Indian Ocean, and he was picking up mountains and carrying them and putting them in the water and making them float to make that bridge. And there was a little spider, and with his little tiny legs he was kicking grains of sand onto the bridge. And he was right in front of Hanuman, and Hanuman didn't want to step on him. So Hanuman is holding this gigantic boulder, and he says to the spider, "Get out of my way." And Ram says to Hanuman, "He is doing every bit as much as you are. You're absorbed according to your capacity to build this bridge, and that little spider is absorbed in his capacity to build this bridge." Krishna sees our love. Krishna sees our sincerity. And our sincerity is very much how much we really want to be absorbed. The tendency that we all have to very much be aware of is the tendency to do things in a ritualistic, superficial way, just because we're supposed to do it, just to get it done. It's almost superstitious. Something bad will happen to me if I don't do it. But we should put our heart into whatever we do. Because to the degree we put our heart into doing positive spiritual things, service, to that degree Krishna's pleased. And to that degree we actually taste Krishna. We taste love for Krishna. So at whatever level we're on, whatever we do, absorption means taking serious responsibility to do the very best we can simply to please the devotees, simply to please and serve the common people for the pleasure of Krishna. Here at the Dharma Castle, I am seeing such absorption. The detail of the beauty of this wonderful place. I was walking all over today. His Grace Gadadhar Prabhu gave me such an incredible tour. And he was telling me, and I was getting a walking commentary by His Holiness Sacinandana Swami Maharaj about. And because Gadadhar Prabhu and all of you who live here, I'm sorry I can't say all of your names because I don't know them all, because you worked so hard to make this a fantastic place, every detail is so fantastic. The altar, so clean, such wonderful deities, such wonderful singhasan, such wonderful flowers, such wonderful everything. Because there's such an absorption of love to just make everything so meticulously beautiful for Krishna and for others. When we see it, we become absorbed. Yes? And when we see, he goes all the way to Venice to get chandeliers, and this incredible molding and wonderful wallpaper and excellent natural floor. You know, we walk on the floor, but this is beautiful wood, natural. To make it so nice takes absorption. The choice of the furniture. I was going in different apartments, and I was seeing how some of them were completely a mess because people were absorbed in taking care of their children. I was impressed. I got absorbed too. And some of them were meticulously clean because they were absorbed in keeping it clean for Krishna. Either way. At least that's my interpretation. No, everything is just so right. Absorbed that when devotees are living here, what is the experience they're going to have? When their Gurudev, Sacinandana Swami Maharaj comes, what is the experience he's going to have? And when the guests come, students, guests, whoever may come, they should have the most incredible experience of devotion when they come. And you see, if you make a fantastic place, but you're really not doing it for the pleasure of God and for the pleasure of others, people will not have a spiritual experience. They'll have an aesthetic experience. but the devotion, the sacrifice, the responsibility of love we absorb ourselves in is what people are going to experience. And here we have this incredible castle. That's just so impressive because it's being maintained the way it is, and the conception of it is to uplift the consciousness of society. To bring the experience of bhakti, love, devotion, and compassion to this world, which so desperately needs it. That's the purpose. And therefore it's like, it is the spiritual world here. And all this medical technology that you're doing here, it's quite incredible because it's all about consciousness. Even in the process of healing people's disease through consciousness, because people are really concerned about diseases. So if we could make people, through the process of medicine, if we can make people conscious of the importance of consciousness, we could heal their body, their minds, and their souls. We have, in Bombay, we have Bhaktivedanta Hospital. To enlighten people, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We have spiritual care as well. We have a Rath Yatra every day that goes to everyone's bed. Really. All the beds. It's a little Rath Yatra chariot about, it's bigger than me, and there's Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, and every day a spiritual care department pulls it, and there's a little kirtan with it, and it goes to every bed, and it gives Charanamrit, and everybody's given a flower they can offer for the deities while they're like this. Even in the emergency ward, they bring it. And we have Hindus, and we have Christians, and we have Muslims, and we have Jains, and we have Sikhs, and we have Zoroastrians, and we have atheists, and we have agnostics, and they're all going like this. And there's a little prasad that everyone gets. Every detail just to somehow or other serve, to enlighten, to care for people. So that's the way we're doing it. So here it's being done in a very, very incredibly scientific way, where we're curing, diagnosing diseases by focusing on consciousness. That's, yes, unbelievable. And when people are actually aware of consciousness and the source of consciousness, it's a bridge that can bring them to love of God very, very effectively. So this Dharma castle, it's like a spaceship that's going to take people to the spiritual realm. And I'm so grateful to you, Gadadharji, Prabhu, for it's just simply wonderful. I'm grateful to all of you who are participating in it and all of you who have come tonight. Should I tell one more story?
Yes.
Sure. Okay, this is a story about absorption. But it's a different perspective. At our temple in Bombay, we have an orphanage. Many years ago, this I think happened in the late 80s, some people came from a village. This village was suffering drought year after year after year. And they became quite close to us. Now, because these villagers are so poor, for them to come to Mumbai is a serious investment. Just to take a bus to Mumbai, it's about a 4-hour drive. Well, one day, about 10 of them came to my room. And, they're dressed in really raggedy clothes, kind of soiled, but they're just wonderful people. Most of them don't have any educations. They're just simple farmers. And they came to see me and they were smiling. And they told me that they had a gift that was sent to them from Tarabai. As soon as I heard the word Tarabai, my heart was very much affected. Something happened deep inside of me. And then they placed that gift in front of me. I've never gotten a gift like that in my life. I was deeply transformed just seeing that gift. It was a gift of such symbolism, a gift of such love from such a simple woman. Would you like to know what the gift was? First, let me tell you something about Tarabai. Before telling you about the gift that was just right on the floor in front of my eyes, I was thinking, I'm going to share this gift with the world. It was a priceless gift. A priceless gift from a person who has nothing. Back in the late 80s, I believe it was, Tarabai came to our temple with a group of others from this village. They told us there was so many years of drought, and all they knew was farming, and nothing grew in their land. So just to feed her children, she had to work hard labor. She would have to walk miles every day around sunrise. And sometimes she would just carry sand on her head for several kilometers one way, then carry something else, bricks or something, coming the other way. And she was an old lady. She was probably in her 60s, but she looked like she was in her 80s. Rugged life. She would carry heavy loads on her head back and forth in the hot summer Indian sun all day long. And her payment was she'd get enough of the cheapest, coarsest wheat, enough to feed her children that day. She'd put water in it, she'd make some bread, just chowpatty, roti, and then next day she'd go to work. She couldn't afford proper food, she couldn't afford education. She asked us if we would take in her son. In my life, I had never seen anyone so skinny. You know what skinny is? He was so thin. Literally, I'm not exaggerating. His thighs were this big around. His arms were like this. He was just a little boy, but he was so thin. And his mother told us that I don't want him to ever feel that he's here because of charity. Because there are so many beggars in India who expect things from people for nothing. I want him to value work, to value giving, and not expecting people to just do him favors. I want him to learn to love. So make sure he's responsible, and make sure he does service for whatever you give him. And this little boy was just so grateful, unbelievably grateful. Gratitude is one of the most precious qualities. The heart is like a field. Love of God, devotion, is like a seed in our heart. Practicing the devotional activities like hearing about the Lord and chanting God's names is like the water that goes on that seed. But humility and gratitude is like the fertilizer that makes the field of the heart very soft, so that the roots of that seed could freely grow very deep and very large, and then come up and rapidly produce the fruits of love of God. That boy was just so grateful for everything, and he always wanted to do service spontaneously. And soon he became the leader of all the boys in the orphanage. Not because he wanted power, he wanted position, he had any ego. He wasn't a bully, he was a servant. He was so eager about chanting, he was so eager about studying about Krishna, he was so eager about studying his lessons in school, he was so eager in being kind to everybody, he was so grateful that he became like the hero of the whole orphanage. And in his school, he got the top marks every year. And even when he was a little kid, he used to give classes to the adults sometimes because everyone wanted to hear him. He was so humble. And one time I went to the village. Drove there in a car with some others. And that village was really run down. It's just in the middle of fields. It's a very agricultural area, long ways from any cities or towns. And it was so hot. And the road wasn't a paved road, it was a dirt road. It was so dusty. And I looked at the ground, that there were thick cracks going through the earth because it hadn't rained there practically for years. And they're farmers, and nothing grows without rain. So they have to go out and try to get some labor, hard labor, to get something to bring home. But they all greeted me with a kirtan, mridungas and kartals, and they were dancing, and they were all, covered with dirt, and it was really a sweet meeting. And then they took me to Tarabai's house. Remember Tarabai? She had a little hut, one room, no dividers in the room, just one little room. Maybe the roof inside was just slightly above your head, and it was about 1/4 the size of this room, at the most. And there was no furniture. There was a clay floor. There was clay walls. was a straw roof. Everything was totally immaculate. Incredible. She didn't know I was coming either. It was immaculate. She got some little powders that she took from a flower, and she made little designs every day outside her house, and she put them inside the house. And everything was in perfect place. There was just one little trunk with everyone's clothes in it. She had other children too. She was a widow. Her husband had died long ago. She had to take care of the whole family. And I was just looking around thinking, the feeling of this house, she just cared so much. She went out and got some different mixtures every day of earth, and she had to walk miles just to bring a bucket of water. And she would put a new coating inside and outside of her house every day of this special kind of mud. It looked so pure and so clean and so nice. Anyways, I understood what it really means to be absorbed in whatever situation, in really, really caring. Her son got initiated later. He was every year the top student in the whole school that he went to. He was the leader of the orphanage as far as his inspiration. And now he has a master's degree, and he's a professor of mathematics at one of the largest universities in Bombay. And he's just as humble and just as simple and just as sweet as ever before. But when those people came to my room to meet me, this was when he was still a child. And I looked down at the gift that Tarabai gave me. Maybe the most precious gift I got in my life. Should I tell you what it was? Covered with dirt was a pile on my floor of peanuts in the shells with these like stems coming out of them. The crudest, rawest, dirtiest peanuts piled up on my floor that Tarabai, in love and gratitude, sent. Please understand, that was the first thing that grew out of her ground in years. And she personally went out and collected them and put them in a burlap bag and sent them to me in gratitude for taking care of her son. When I ate those peanuts, I wasn't eating peanuts. I was eating her love, her gratitude, her devotion, her absorption. And people were coming to my room for so many days. Sometimes simple people, sometimes very wealthy people. And I would give them a peanut with a stem coming out of the shell, covered with dirt. And I'd say, "Here is prasad." And I couldn't explain what it meant to everybody like I'm explaining to you. But it didn't matter whether they understood or not. I understood that they were going to get the energy of what went into those peanut shells. our beloved Gurudev Srila Prabhupada. His absorption in love manifested as his genuine care and compassion for every living being. Imagine, 70 years old, on an old cargo ship, just had heart attacks, on sea. He had no money. He didn't know if anyone was going to be waiting for him. And what was he praying? Give me the words to make these people happy. Krishna, give me the words to penetrate their heart with your message so that they could be happy. Now they're trying to be happy through lust and envy and greed and ego. But there's no true happiness there. Give me the power to give them the happiness of your love, Krishna. Make me your puppet. He endured so much because he was totally absorbed in love, in care. That's our nature. It's the highest potential within all of us, to be absorbed in love, which is expressed through being absorbed in service. Trinarapi sunichena tarori vasahishnuna amani namanadena kirtaniya sadahari. Lord Chaitanya said, if you want this absorption, be humble like a blade of grass. Tolerant and forgiving like a tree. Try to give all respect to others and don't expect respect for oneself. The greatest benediction is that God has appeared in His name, and all of these highest truths of compassion, of love, can be accessed when we absorb ourselves in Krishna, who has so kindly come in His name. So when we're in kirtan, when we're in japa, the goal is not just to get the numbers done. That's something that we should do. But the goal is to absorb ourselves. And that means to care, to try our best. The difference between mechanical chanting and sincere chanting is we're trying our best. Even if the mind's running everywhere, if we're just trying to absorb it, that effort is absorption. Even if we may not think, why am I not tasting Krishna? Just trying is an absorption. And it will make Krishna so pleased. And in everything we do, let us do it with a sense of responsibility, with a sense of doing whatever we do the very, very, very best that we can because we care, and be absorbed devotional service. And that is what Sacinandana Maharaj is constantly trying to teach us. And that is what Gadadhar Prabhu was so wonderfully assimilated and manifested in this magnificent castle. To me, it's not magnificent because of the beautiful wallpaper and the beautiful chandeliers and the beautiful choice of furniture and the beautiful everything that's here. Everything really is beautiful. But what's most beautiful is the care, the love, the compassion that has created it all. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Radhanath Maharaj, about your very practical class to to attain absorption through really caring in what we do. I can imagine that some of you feel inspired to become absorbed now and to do something with caring, and you might like to have some more. Maybe if you have a question or two, we can just take the questions and then listen to the answers and then become absorbed. I have a question. I'm always thinking about these things. May I ask?
Maharaj, I am your servant.
I have noticed in life that we tend to become absorbed in what we have a taste for, so to say. Like your father is a family man, and he had a child, and I saw him. He is a very, very, very kind person, and he definitely must have a taste for this life, to take care of his son, be connected. And actually anything we do is driven by taste, and Srila Prabhupada talks about this in the Nectar of Devotion, in the introduction, that service is always propelled by some taste is there. Then it's so easy to become absorbed through taste. And very often devotees come to me and they say, well, in the beginning we had taste. We thought every devotee is a pure devotee, every mantra is a revelation. But something happened on the way to heaven. We lost our taste. So, and with it, our absorption. Can you talk a little bit about taste and how to obtain taste? What is your personal secret? You are so, when you speak, we can feel you are shaking with deep conviction and enthusiasm and so on. And we feel touched by what you say, and there's suspense because you obviously are absorbed in what you do. You have also a taste for what you do. So this taste, how will this come to our stone-like heart? Hare Krishna.
I wish I had taste. But if you have a stone-like heart, it is because you are always remembering Govardhan Shila. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he told us, and Prabhupada would quote this many, many times, do not try to see Krishna, but try to serve Krishna so that he wants to see you. So in the beginning, everything's very new, and new things usually taste pretty good, whatever it may be. Yes, especially devotion. Because we've been just in the Puna Charavadana, we've been chewing the chewed and the chewed and chewing the chewed again and chewing it again and then spitting it and chewing it, and all the material pleasures we have, we've had it all life after life after life, and we're still trying to enjoy again and again and again. And then we get the nectar of devotion, and it's just so special, and it makes so much sense, and it's so sweet. But oftentimes, that beautiful sweetness that we're tasting in devotional service, we're doing it because we enjoy it. And that's good. It's better to enjoy devotion than enjoy selfishness. But at a certain point, when we come to a certain level of spiritual advancement, of course, if we're inattentive then we're going to lose the taste. And if we're mistreating other people, then God is not pleased with us, so we also lose our taste. So we have to be very careful about these things, that we're not inattentive when we're chanting and when we're doing service, and we're not making offenses to other people. But even if we're avoiding those things very sincerely and we're doing things very selflessly, at a certain point, love means we're doing it for Krishna, we're not doing it for ourselves. So sometimes Krishna just takes away the taste. Now, are you doing it for me? Because I like it? Or are you doing it for yourself because you like it? Yes? So if you don't feel any taste in chanting, first of all, am I making aparadhs, offenses? Let me avoid that. Am I being inattentive? Avoid that. But even if I'm really trying and I'm really being sincere, if that taste isn't there, we should feel this is Krishna's blessing. He wants me to chant for His pleasure. So I'll chant with even more enthusiasm to make Him happy, even though I don't feel anything. Haribol! Does that make sense? And same with everything else we do. At the beginning, if we're mopping the floor was so ecstatic because I'm doing it. This is devotional service, but at a certain point, it's a duty. Where is that higher taste? The question is, am I going to mop that floor just as meticulously and enthusiastically for Krishna, for all the other devotees to walk on nicely, whether I feel it or not? That's an opportunity for a higher level of love, a higher level of absorption. The highest taste is not to be concerned with the taste. The highest taste is that Krishna experiences that higher taste. This is the highest philosophy. The gopis. Haribol. Is that an indication we're supposed to end? Should I tell about the gopis? The Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita explains the gopis, they do not care anything for their own enjoyment. They're only concerned with Krishna's enjoyment. But Krishna's like the root of the tree. To the degree we satisfy Krishna, even though they don't care anything about their own enjoyment, they just want to give Krishna happiness, they attain the ultimate happiness. Because it's selfless love. Krishna gives them the highest happiness because they have no desire for their own happiness. They have a desire for God's happiness. A mother, you were Anita, yes? Anita was talking about the love of a mother. The feeling of a mother. Sometimes a mother's greatest happiness is not in what happens to her. It's the experience of the child. Yes? In love, even if the mother is doing things she really doesn't like to do, but it's giving satisfaction to the child, does that give you happiness? A much deeper happiness than just doing what you like to do. Love means our happiness is the happiness of the beloved. And that's also how we attain love, by putting Krishna in the center. So Maharaj, just whatever we feel, whatever we taste, if we just have enthusiasm to do it right, because it pleases Guru, the Vaishnavas, all living beings, and ultimately Krishna, then that's actually the path to the greatest happiness. If you like, you can... No. You can give a comment.
I really asked to get your answer, and you've given your answer that is very practical and very, very nice. Yes, and it is true. When you do something out of love, then you have a taste for it. I remember when I was a young devotee, I had come from a family where I used to wash myself entirely only on Saturday evenings in a hot bathing tub. I would lie there for half an hour and read Mickey Mouse, and then come out, and I considered that a bath. And then I became a devotee, and the devotees took a bath every day, and that with cold water. So I really thought this would break me. I thought I cannot practice this cold water, because I was quite sensitive. I remember one devotee held my left arm and the other right arm, and then they helped me to get the water immersion. And I remember I thought this is too much austerity for me. I mean, once a week in hot water, but not every day in cold water at an inhuman early time. So I really thought I couldn't do it, and then the devotees just told me, they saw my difficulty, just do it with a different perspective. Don't consider yourself, just see if you can please, by taking a cold shower, if you can actually do it in a mood that you please Krishna, that I'm getting ready very early, I'm getting awake very early for your chanting. And I do remember the simple meditation, I'm taking my cold shower for you, Krishna, has later expanded into doing many other things. I'm doing this for you, Srila Prabhupada, when I learned about the role of Srila Prabhupada. And all of a sudden I had taste in something which I previously despised. I remember that. And it's a very good and practical way. I'm doing this now for you. And then taste will arise, because love arises. So I can only say a well-given answer. Thank you very much.
I think Sacinandana Maharaj has liberated Mickey Mouse. by your association. Thank you. When I was a little boy, I used to like a song, and one of the lines of the song was, "The Jordan River is chilly and cold. It chills the body but warms the soul." Because the Jordan River is the holy river in Jerusalem. And people bathe in the Jordan River not just to get cold, not just to get clean, but it's an act of worship. It's a holy place, and we're honoring the holiness of that place. And if you're just going to get clean, then it's really cold. That's all it is. But if you go with faith in the holiness of that place, it may chill the body, but it gives such warmth to the soul.
You have the experience of giving Krishna consciousness to others in India and also in America and practically all over the world. So do you see a difference in how to communicate Krishna consciousness to the people? Like in India, like our movement comes from India originally. So we do hear everything the same, much the same like the Buddha is doing it in India. So this is something we were very much thinking about. It's the way how we do the things in Krishna consciousness externally. Is there not an obstacle for people here in Europe or in America to accept Krishna consciousness? If we're doing the right thing to attract people to Krishna consciousness, I guess it's a question which we are discussing a lot. Because now it's different times, and Srila Prabhupada, when he came to New York in the middle of the hippie movement, this kind of dress was really far out. And now people think it is some relic, some dinosaurs from the 70s. So what is your opinion from your experience about this?
This is a very
sublime topic. We could approach this question from different levels. One level, Srila Prabhupada taught by his example. What we must understand, the foundation of Srila Prabhupada's outreach, was he deeply, genuinely cared about people. He really, from the core of his soul, he wanted to show compassion to people. Yes? It wasn't just about how he wore a dhoti and he had tilak and he cooked chutney and sabji and he chanted with mridanga and kartals. Those are all sacred traditions that he gave us. But what made it all work was he really cared. When he gave us these books, he gave us his heart. When he gave a lecture, it was the urgency to really, really lift people up from the sufferings of this world and give people a real understanding that you are an eternal soul. You are a precious, priceless child of God, beyond birth, beyond death. That's who you are. And love for God and love for all beings is within you. Wake up to that. He had such love and such compassion. He was willing to give everything and do anything to wake up that love in people. That's what an acharya is. And to the degree we really have that concern, we're going to be empowered. Not only did Srila Prabhupada have such a deep concern for people's lives, but he had such a great commitment to do that service to please his Guru and Krishna. And on the basis of his love and his concern, he did a lot of creative things. He went to the Avalon Ballroom. The Avalon Ballroom was Haight-Ashbury. Can I tell you a story? Okay. I was recently with Shamsundar Prabhu, our dear God brother, in Los Angeles. And I was on the phone with him. And he said, I have another call coming in, but I don't know who it's from. It's an unrecognizable number. Can you hold on? I said, just call me back later. He called me back an hour later. He said, you won't believe who was on the phone with me. I said, who? He said, Rock Scully. Haribo. He told me for hours about Rock Scully. He was a very prominent person in the 1960s. He was one of the most instrumental people who actually began Haight-Ashbury. He was the manager of a band called the Grateful Dead. And Rock Scully was instrumental. When Prabhupada was coming to San Francisco, Shamsundar wanted to do something really extraordinary to introduce Prabhupada to the people of the West. In New York, he was chanting in Tompkins Square Park, and a few people were coming. And he had a few very, very serious, dedicated people who dedicated themselves in 26 Second Avenue. But as far as making an impact in a generation, it was in San Francisco at this event. Shamsundar called Rock Scully. He said, my guru is coming. I want to have a concert with the big bands, because everybody will come for that, and have my guru chant and give a lecture there. So there was two big concert halls in the Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco district, the Fillmore West and the Avalon Ballroom. And Rock Scully called the Avalon Ballroom and said, I will have my band, the Grateful Dead, play there for free as a benefit to bring people to meet the Swami. And he said, well, if you're going to do it, I have to say yes. And then Janis Joplin and Moby Grape and Cant and the biggest bands of America all played there. And there were thousands and thousands of hippies. Most of them were on LSD and taking marijuana. And the strobe lights playing Shamsundar and Rock Scully and Mukunda Maharaj. They got the biggest, best light show producer to have different kinds of psychedelic lights and strobes, and they got all these people to come. And Prabhupada went on stage, and all these rock and roll bands were playing, and Allen Ginsberg, who was the counterculture poet, they all were there. And Timothy Leary, the LSD king, was there, and Owsley Stanley, who was the producer of LSD, was there. And all these other people were there. Now, is this the traditional way that sadhus, swamis of India preach? Prabhupada was chanting, and there were strobe lights going boom, 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 boom. And Prabhupada's lecturing, and then as he's chanting, these rock and roll guys, they get back there and start playing the drums with two bass drums, and then guys with bass guitars, and Prabhupada's going, Hare Krishna, strobe lights beaming, and then hippies are dancing and going crazy. And Prabhupada looked at one devotee and said, this is no place for a brahmachari. But that event, thousands and thousands of people understood who is Prabhupada, what is Krishna. And it started coming to the temple, and people were becoming devotees like anything after that. So The most important thing, and why did Prabhupada do that? Because he really cared. He really wanted to reach people. And he was willing to do something very unorthodox, because if orthodoxy is preventing us from actually reaching people's hearts, then it's not necessary. What's necessary is we never change the siddhanta, the basic principles of our teachings and our philosophy. And we have a tradition, and the tradition is sacred. We have the tradition of the way we dress, we have the tradition of the way we eat, we have many traditions. These are very sacred, and we should preserve these traditions. But as far as reaching out to people, Prabhupada put so much emphasis on the Bhaktivedanta Institute, where he had people become scientists and wear suits and ties and talk the language of scientists to try to reach people. Yes? And Prabhupada quoted Bhakti Vinod Thakur about how there will be high court justices who will be great devotees of the Lord. That was a dream. So what's important is, according to time, place, and circumstance and the people of a particular, where we are, is that we present bhakti in a way that is relevant. We present it without adulterating the essence, adulterating the truths. The truths must be as it is. But we could present it in whichever way it's actually relevant to interest people, to open their hearts to receive it. And what I personally found in my life, my observation, that if people like you, they trust you. And if people trust you, they open their hearts to what you say. So if we really want to have a substantial effect on people, individuals, and society, we have to, in a very genuine, not artificial way, become their friends. I don't think it's a matter of how we dress. I think it's a matter of who we are. We have to act in ways that people will respect. Respect who we are and what we stand for according to their own relative position. Srila Prabhupada said to one reporter, "You will know my devotees because they are perfect ladies and gentlemen." Now he was saying ladies and gentlemen from their perspective. Yes? Sometimes we want people to be relevant to us. That's called a very insulated, isolated society. When we want people to be relevant to what we believe and who we are and what we are. Doesn't work. We have to be relevant to who they are and where they're at. By our character, by our morality, by our kindness, by our compassion, by our respect to them. Prabhupada respected everyone. And if we don't respect people, then are they going to open their hearts to hear what we say? Are they going to trust anything? As far as I could see, the real secret is we have devotees who really become very expert at everything. It's Varnashram. Devotee doctors, devotee lawyers, devotee scientists, devotee vastu gurus, devotee teachers, devotee swamis, devotee accountants, devotee mothers, devotee teachers, devotee fathers, and actually show people how wherever you are, you can be really, really happy and live a meaningful life and make great spiritual advancement by just applying these principles. That's relevant to people. And we have our monks. And we have our family people. And we have our yogis. We have people in every aspect of society as much as possible who are showing through their good character, through their respect, and through their love how to be really, really happy by chanting Hare Krishna and loving Krishna, with Krishna in the center of your life. And I think Prabhupada allowed us the liberty to really use our imagination and our creativity to reach people's hearts. We just have to keep the Siddhanta as it is, the essential teachings. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Maharaj, you can say something because you're expert on this subject.
Well, I only remember a somewhat confrontational meeting between my father and Srila Prabhupada. My father was at that time angry at Srila Prabhupada because two of his sons had joined Srila Prabhupada's movement, and he went to a public lecture to vent his anger in the form of a question. He wanted to show that Prabhupada actually had acted irresponsibly by starting his movement and making Indians out of the Germans. That was his point. So he asked Srila Prabhupada, or he challenged Srila Prabhupada with an analogy. He said, he started, your movement will be unsuccessful in the West because you are trying to bring an Indian movement with Indian cultural externals into the West. You are just like trying to bring a crocodile from the river Nile in the warm Egypt into the river Elbe, that's a river near Hamburg, very cold, and you will see your crocodile will die. That's what you do. Your movement will die here because it's an Indian movement in the cold West German world. And then Prabhupada just looked at my father and looked at my father and looked at my father. He was actually silent, but then his answer came brief and like an atom bomb. He said, you can become Krishna conscious in tie and suit. In other words, externals don't matter. It's not about an Indian external culture. You can be in your German dress, but you can accept the principles of Krishna consciousness and in this way become Krishna conscious. And to this day, my father is admiring Srila Prabhupada because he defeated him solidly. He was speechless, no further argument. He just sat in his chair and he was happy with the answer.
And the crocodile still lives. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
You seem to ask me the little answer we should do now? Or should we look at the time? Maybe we should walk. Maybe sing this short.
I am your puppet.
Yeah. I'm the puppet of our audience. Do you think we should just maybe end with a very brief, small bhajan and kirtan? Yeah? Is it a good idea? Good.
Would you rather sit or dance? You have choice of sitting or dancing.
Dancing is good in the evening, yes.
Would you like me to chant or would you like
No, you, of course.
Maharaj.
Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
The puppeteer is pulling my strings. Please dance.